On the 18th of November 2020, Utah's Wildlife Agency were traveling by helicopter through San Juan County, USA, to survey the native bighorn sheep. What they actually found, however, left them sheepish. In the middle of the desert was a giant, gleaming metal monolith, about 10 to 12 feet tall. Who, what, how, or why someone put it there was a complete mystery. But its sudden appearance in the middle of nowhere was only the beginning. Why? Well, stay tuned as we take a look at what happened to this mysterious monolith and a lot of other objects that appeared out of nowhere before vanishing without explanation. Once images of the monolith began circling on the web, comparisons to Stanley Kubrick's 2001: A Space Odyssey, which also features a weird alien monolith, came rolling in. Whether the Utah monolith was put there by aliens to make us feel smarter remains to be seen. Though if it was, it hasn't worked. What was figured out, based on Google Earth imagery, was that the Utah monolith was installed sometime between August 2015 and October 2016. I don't know what's a bigger mystery, this monolith or how we ever coped before Google. However, 10 days after the strange object's discovery, onlookers hoping to see the alien artifact with their own eyes found that it had vanished. So, who removed it? Was it extraterrestrial forces taking the thing back to their own galaxy? Fortunately, no. Instead, it was a group of men who scrapped the sculpture, led by sportsman Andy L. Lewis. The team's beef was due to the monolith attracting curious tourists who were inadvertently damaging the landscape. Certainly a noble cause. That isn't the end of our monolithic mysteries, however. Just 10 days later, on the 27th of November 2020, a similarly strange sculpture was found in Batca Domne, Romania, only to vanish overnight, days after its discovery. This was not the last sighting. Throughout 2020, 200 more monoliths appeared all over the world. It became such a sensation that on Christmas Day in San Francisco, locals woke up to find a monolith made of gingerbread looming over the city. For all the creative copycats, though, it's still unknown exactly who erected the original Utah monolith, or why. Although if anyone wants to erect a new one made of a cookie, I volunteer to help with the vanishing part. UFO? Look, what I'm about to say to you may sound crazy, but I promise I'm not secretly wearing a tinfoil hat right now. Did you know there are videos of the US Air Force interacting with UFOs? Wait, come back. In 2020, the Pentagon authorized the release of several videos after they were leaked to the public. The footage dates back to 2007, when a member of Above Top Secret, a website dedicated to conspiracy theories, claimed to have worked on a U.S. aircraft carrier and smuggled footage off the ship. The first incident takes place in November 2004, off the coast of San Diego. Something was amiss on the USS Nimitz aircraft carrier. A nearby missile cruiser, the USS Princeton, was picking up strange readings near San Clemente Island on its radar. These readings would appear and disappear, and was nothing like the movement of planes. Things got weirder when two jets from the Nimitz went to see what the hubbub was all about. They reportedly came across a white, oval-shaped object the same size as the jets hovering above churning water. The floating phenomena was wingless, with no obvious means of propulsion, and looked like a giant tic-tac. When the jets came in to have a closer look, the object flew away at hypersonic speed. That's around 3,000 miles per hour, more than 5 times faster than the speed of sound. If the account is trustworthy, that's a heck of a story. This isn't the only time the US military has tangoed with UFOs, though. In early 2015, off the coast of Florida, pilots from the USS Theodore Roosevelt were flying over the sea when they recorded something they couldn't explain. The crew involved in this incident have chosen to remain anonymous, and the circumstances surrounding the video remain unknown.
There's a whole fleet of them. Look on the ASA. My gosh.
While we can only see one UFO here, the pilot's radar apparently detected a whole fleet of them. So what are these things? Well, nobody knows. While the US government have found no evidence to show that alien technology was being used, they can't deny it either. And there you have it. One day, the Earth will be conquered by flying mints. I know what takes my mind off impending alien invasion. Clicking those like and subscribe buttons. That way you'll keep up to date with facts that are truly out of this world. Now, what do we got next? Hair today, gone tomorrow. You may have heard that rabbits can multiply like crazy, but apparently they can appear out of nowhere too. One morning in 2005, the villagers of Artesina, Piedmont, Italy, were surprised to look out their window and see a giant pink rabbit lying on top of Coleto Fava Mountain. The sculpture is 200 feet long and 20 feet tall, big enough for wanderers to climb all over it. The gigantic teddy, called Hase, which is German for hair, is actually an art installation by Vienna art group Gelatin, who are well known for their particularly wacky art pieces. Hase was completed after 5 years of knitting its outer skin and then stuffing it with straw. Wow, that must have taken a whole army of grannies. The creature is supposed to look like it's fallen out of the sky, hence why its squishy bits are sticking out. While the group expected the art to remain until 2025, the lumpy lagomorph started disintegrating at an alarming rate. There were no plans to remove or save the bunny. Grass began to sprout of its knitted skin, animals foraged inside its body, and it began to ooze brown slush. By 2016, it had pretty much disappeared. If you look at the hill today, you might never know that a giant pink rabbit was ever there. Ali Janka, a member of the art group, said the decay was part of the point. You could climb upon the rabbit and feel like a maggot in its flesh, and then you are so happily transformed into a fly, then float away. Honestly, I wasn't planning on visiting the site of this thing, and I'm definitely not going now. Gone ballistic. These days, all sorts of trash washes up on the beach. Bottles, plastic, paraphernalia, though an alien spaceship's gotta take the cake. In February 2023, on the quiet Enshu Beach on Hamamatsu, on the Japanese Pacific coast, a giant iron ball was discovered. The ball was about 5 feet in diameter and covered in rust. Not knowing what they were dealing with, police cordoned off a 656-foot radius around the orb to try and figure out what the heck it was. After extensive studies, authorities came to the conclusion that they had no clue. Many feared it was a kind of sea mine, so the bomb squad were called in to have it deactivated. Though these worries were put to rest when X-ray scans showed that the sphere was hollow. Speculation as to what the ball could be ranged from a Godzilla egg to a crashed spaceship. All this attention came as a surprise to locals, with one claiming that the ball had been there for weeks before the media took notice. Now, I don't want to burst your bubble, or your ball, but that raised handle indicates a far more mundane reality than a spacefaring cyber egg. And that's that the ball was probably a mooring buoy. When a buoy becomes unhooked, it can float in sea for years, turning its surface to rust. This happens frequently in other parts of the world. Residents along the Scottish coast wouldn't have batted an eye at the site. Eventually, the day came when the ball disappeared. The Hamamatsu government took the sphere away, apparently to be disposed of, though they never divulged exactly what they did with it. Maybe it is an egg, and they put it in a giant incubator. Fecal matters. Have you ever had a neighbor's pooch leave an unwanted present in your front yard? Yeah, it's horrible. You can at least be glad that present wasn't 50 feet tall, though. In 2008 in Switzerland, a group of kids at a children's home witnessed a giant flying dog turd landing in their garden. I mean, dang, how big was the dog? This enormous excrement flew against the home, smashing a window before it blew away to wherever the wind took it. The colossal crap is an artwork called YouTube doesn't like that word, so let's say stool. It was the creation of American artist Paul McCarthy, who specializes in large-scale art projects, with many of them being provocative in nature. So provocative, in fact, that there's no way I can get away with showing some of them. Mr. McCarthy came to prominence in the 70s, where his ostentatious style flourished. The Vietnam War and hippie movement was the perfect backdrop for his kind of experimental, angry, and challenging art, though none of these went on a public rampage quite like this prodigious plop. The house-sized heap was on public display at the Zentrum Paul Klee in Bern. A storm blew up and carried it 656 feet away before stopping off at the children's home, where the massive muck brought down a power line and broke a greenhouse window. The artwork had a safety mechanism in place where it deflates if blown away, but it clearly didn't work. It's a good thing it didn't land on anyone's house. Imagine trying to explain that to the insurance company. They'd think you were full of stool. Peking Tom. We've all lost something valuable at some point. Your phone, your keys, your wallet. Embarrassing, right? At the very least, you can be glad you never lost anything that's 200,000 years old. Our story takes us back to 1921, when Swedish geologist John Gunnar Anderson visited Zhoukoudian Cave in the Fangsheng district of Beijing, China, after being told it was filled with dragon bones. Intrigued, Anderson and others began to excavate. 200 fossils of the ancient Homo erectus pekinensis, also known as the Peking Man, who could have looked something like this, were unearthed. This subspecies of Homo erectus, very funny, lived in the Middle Pleistocene, which dates back 200,000 to 700,000 years ago. During World War II, after China was invaded by Japan, Chinese authorities entrusted the fossils to American troops for safekeeping. The bones were sent to a U.S. Marine base before being shipped to the mainland, except the fossils never arrived. Over the years, many theories as to what happened to the Peking Man slowly emerged. Paul Edwards of St. Andrews University posits the U.S. ship could have been intercepted by the Japanese and the bones taken to Japan. Another theory is that a Japanese boat intercepted the fossils before being sunk, leaving the Peking Man at the bottom of the sea. Maybe the American government did receive the bones, but decided they'd rather report them lost and hang on to them, for safekeeping. A breakthrough came in April 2010, though, when Paul Bowen, the son of a former U.S. Marine, emailed paleontologist Lee Berger from the University of Witwatersrand in South Africa. Bowen claimed his father discovered boxes of fossils while stationed in Qinhuangdao during China's Civil War in 1947. Berger decided to investigate further, and with a little help from his paleontologist friends, found the Marine base where Bowen's father was stationed, only to find that it's now a parking lot. The lot hasn't been excavated, so the Peking Trail, unfortunately, runs cold here. Who knows how many other of our strange ancestors might lie at the bottom of the sea, frozen in glaciers, and buried under parking lots. Shadow and Stone. The Lake District in northwest England has become world-renowned for its inspiring beauty. From William Wordsworth to Beatrix Potter and even Taylor Swift, the Lake District has been a muse for artists throughout generations. Also, it might be haunted. Why do I say that? Well, in 2021, strange stone sculptures started appearing all over the Lake District, none more noticeable than in Barrowdale Valley, where this image was captured by photographer Carl Halliday. Now, I don't know about you, but looking at that thing is giving me serious Blair Witch vibes. The Lake District is full of spooky legends, like the story of Long Meg, another stone circle with strange origins. Legend says that Meg of Meldon and her daughters were witches who danced on the Sabbath night, or midnight to non-witches. As punishment for their sins, they were turned to stone by Michael Scott. No, not the main guy from The Office. The Michael from legend was a supposedly powerful wizard. So, was there some sort of magic ritual going on with this stone monument? Probably not. But no one knows for certain who created the sculpture. All this secrecy has earned the unidentified artist the nickname the Barrowdale Banksy, inspired by the anonymous graffiti artist. Clever, huh? The statue was crafted from slate, a stone local to the area, and it isn't held together by magic either. A wooden frame was likely used to arrange the pieces, creating a circular structure. The media decided to keep the exact location of these sites a secret, to stop walkers attempting to climb dangerous footpaths. Wow, even British news is polite. A year later, 2 walkers wishing to see the circle found that it had completely collapsed. I guess this sculpture's fate wasn't set in stone. Spear today, gone tomorrow. According to the Bible, when Jesus was crucified, a Roman centurion stabbed his body with a lance to see whether he was still alive. That centurion was later canonized as Saint Longinus, which to me seems like it's just rewarding poor behavior. The spear has become one of the most sought-after Christian relics, up there with the Holy Grail and the Ark of the Covenant. So, where is it? That story takes us back to the ancient city of Antioch, in the Hatay province of what is now Turkey. It was June 1098 during the First Crusade. The Christian army had captured the city, but were shut in by Turkish and Arab forces. Supplies were running out and morale was running low. One of the soldiers was Peter Bartholomew, a scruffy peasant from Provence, France. Peter claimed that Saint Andrew had appeared to him and revealed the Holy Lance's location. Peter told his superiors, who surprisingly believed him. They ordered a search to be conducted, and on the 15th of June, Peter led the soldiers to Antioch's Cathedral of St. Peter. After a day of digging, Peter leapt into the hole and re-emerged with a piece of iron that he claimed to be the lance. The soldiers reportedly took it as the real deal. With renewed morale, they eventually fought their way out of Antioch. This unlikely hero eventually became a spiritual leader of the Crusaders, but quickly let the power go to his head. After ordering naysayers to be executed, his followers began to doubt him. To prove his and the lance's worth, Peter subjected himself to ordeal by fire on April 8, 1099. Ordeal by fire was common in the Middle Ages. A suspect was burnt and their innocence judged by the extent of their wounds. A good system, I know. The Crusaders lit 2 fires next to each other, and then Peter walked through holding the lance. Stories differ on what happened next. Some claim that Peter was fatally burnt and died on the 20th of April, 1099. Others say that he was unharmed by the fire, and that his death was caused by an enemy ambush once the ordeal was over. Either way, once Peter died, the lance was discredited, then lost to time. Of course, being a highly prized religious artifact isn't the only lance of Longinus. Some claim that it's in the Vatican, the Armenian city of Vaashapat, and even in Vienna. How many spears did this guy have? Diamonds aren't forever. Have you ever wanted to dress up, even if it's not really necessary for the occasion? Well, that's what Duke of Burgundy Charles the Bold did all the time. According to legend, Charles wore the Florentine diamond, a beautiful and priceless gemstone, into the Battle of Nancy in 1477. Heck, just because you're going to slaughter your enemies doesn't mean you can't look fabulous doing it. The Florentine diamond was said to be an asymmetrically octagonal shape, with a citron tint and weighed 139 carats, which is roughly an ounce. Unfortunately for Charles, he was slain in combat. A soldier supposedly found the diamond in the remnants of the battlefield and, thinking that it was made of glass, sold the gem for 1 florin. That's around $773 in modern currency. Not great, considering the diamond's now estimated to be worth $20 million. However, the story of Charles and the scavenging soldier is likely just a tall tale. The first historical reference to the diamond comes much later, in 1657, when French traveler Jean-Baptiste Tavernier described a large gem owned by Ferdinand II, the Grand Duke of Tuscany. The diamond was reportedly the largest in Europe at the time, though no one knows exactly how Ferdinand got the thing in the first place. What we do know is that by 1743, the diamond was owned by the Habsburg family, a royal family, and became a part of the Austrian crown jewels. That is until 1918, when World War I came and spoilt everything. When the war ended, so did the Habsburgs' empire. The diamond was supposedly set into a brooch and smuggled away to Switzerland, where the family were exiled. Ever since the family moved, its whereabouts are unknown. Did the Habsburg family lose it? Was it stolen? Maybe they just forgot to pack it. I know I've done the same before a vacation, although luckily Speedos aren't quite as expensive as diamonds, last I checked. Cross? I'm furious. The Bermuda Islands are lined with beautiful coral reefs that span 200 square miles around the coast. As a result, the place is littered with shipwrecks. In fact, Bermuda is the shipwreck capital of the world, with more wrecks per square mile than anywhere else on the planet. All this sunken loot makes the island waters an ideal place for a bit of treasure hunting, and one particularly intrepid hunter was Teddy Tucker. In 1955, Tucker discovered a ship, possibly the San Pedro, which was a Spanish vessel brought down by a hurricane in 1594. Swimming amongst the forgotten wreckage, Tucker began to find pieces of gold. The most precious of all was a 22-carat cross. The treasure measured 3 inches by 1.5 inches and was embedded with 7 green emeralds. The British Museum valued the cross to be worth $200,000. That's nearly $2.3 million in today's money. Hoping that the treasure would stay on the islands, Tucker sold the cross to the Bermudan government for half the British estimate. The Tucker Cross took center stage at the Maritime Museum in preparation for the arrival of Queen Elizabeth II and Prince Philip on the 16th of February, 1975. Tucker was at the museum awaiting the royals' arrival when he noticed something quite right. The cross looked dull and felt tacky. Upon closer inspection, he realized it was covered in gold paint. He realized the cross was a cheap replica and that the real one must have been stolen. Despite investigations carried out by the Bermuda Police, Scotland Yard, Interpol, and the FBI, the thieves were never captured, and the Tucker Cross has never been found. The treasure was probably broken into pieces and sold for a fraction of their cultural worth. Though if you want my opinion, I've got a sneaky feeling Liz might have had something to do with it. Trashy treasures. The city of Cuenca in Ecuador was once the home of an Italian priest, Father Carlo Crespi. This man would be behind an outstanding mystery that would last long after his death. The priest cared deeply for his flock, and even helped to set up an orphanage, and provided education for them. But that wasn't enough for Crespi. He wanted to support the poor locals without having to resort to straight-up charity, so the priest decided to buy things from them. It didn't matter what the stuff was, the old man would pay. Over time, Crespi accumulated over 50,000 objects. While the majority of these items were absolute junk, some of them have become bound with myth. It has been claimed that Crespi received treasures of sculpted gold and ancient relics from Babylonia. Considering he was primarily buying from the poor, those are some tall claims. Unfortunately, in 1962, the bulk of Crespi's collection was destroyed in a fire, so we'll never know for certain. And even the fate of those surviving objects has been subject to rumor. In 1973, Swiss pseudo-archaeologist Erich von Däniken claimed that Crespi was bestowed with artifacts from the Taos Caves. These artifacts were supposedly created by a lost civilization, who were granted technology far beyond their years by extraterrestrial beings. I can't say I'm convinced. Dukian hasn't provided a shred of evidence for any of these theories. How about I tell you something a little more substantial? After the fire, the remaining pieces were purchased by the Central Bank of Ecuador, where everything from weapons, stone carvings, and shrunken human heads are currently stored and maintained. All the artifacts have been sourced from Ecuador with no sign of Babylonian intruders or alien interferers. Here's hoping Crespi will be remembered as a kind old dude rather than a crazy man who had access to mountains of alien gold. Lazy bones. I've found some amazing things under my bed before. Dollar bills, lost remotes, packets of Skittles from the 90s. But even I've never found dinosaur bones down there. This is the Archaeopteryx, and it was a fascinating animal. It lived 150 million years ago, though it wasn't very large compared to other dinosaurs, about the same size as a crow. However, this tiny terror is often thought as the missing link between dinosaurs and modern-day birds. In 1956, an Archaeopteryx fossil was found in the Solnhofen quarry, Germany. Funnily enough, all Archaeopteryx specimens we currently know of have been found in Solnhofen limestone. During the animal's era, this rocky landscape would have been lagoons for as far as the eye could see. Creatures would sometimes fall into the soft, muddy waters and drown, leaving their remains to become fossilized. After the remains were found, the owner of Solnhofen Quarry, Eduard Opitsch, allowed the fossil to be studied. Upon inspection, experts realized that the fossil was an Archaeopteryx, the third recognized specimen ever recorded at the time. It was displayed at the Marksburg Museum in Mornsheim, for which Opitsch gave his permission. But it turns out the quarry owner was a regular old Scrooge. He became incredibly protective of the fossil, and in 1974 demanded it back from the museum and refused to let anyone see the artifact ever again. When the old man died in 1991, the fossil was nowhere to be found. The last place it was seen was under his bed. Imagine hiding something 150 million years old under your bed. Perhaps Opitsch hid it as a final act of selfishness, or even had it buried with his body. Whatever it is, only 11 specimens of this remarkable creature exist, making Opitsch's greed a blow to paleontology. Thankfully, the Marksburg Museum made a cast of the fossil before the cantankerous quarry manager snatched the original away. Opitsch is lucky he's no longer with us. I've got a real bone to pick with that guy. Have you ever come across an amazing artifact, only for it to vanish without a trace? Let me know down in the comments below, and thanks for watching.